Broadcasting on all frequencies from the neutron star, I'm Jonathan Bartlett, and this is Prisoner Transfer W00K13. Welcome once again to Prisoner Transfer W00K13. I'm Jonathan Bartlett, and I will be acting as host and moderator of today's show. Due to recent rebel activity, it has been very difficult to transfer the captured scum and villainy that I have aboard my ship. I've had to take alternate hyperspace routes, and in my boredom, I've devised a little game in order for me to stay entertained, as well as a means of the Empire gaining valuable information. And now I'd like to introduce today's cargo. First of all, we have rebel captive and smuggler Andrew DePoe.
Hey, everybody.
And we also have a cryptographic communication droid, A14N, who we've taken to call Chris.
What up?
So I've devised a little game for you, too. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions that might suit the Empire, and if you are able to answer those questions to my liking, I'll award you a point. Accumulate enough of these points, and in addition to extra rations and a little power booster for you, Chris, I'm willing to put in a good word to help alleviate your sentence.
Ooh.
So the first question is I want to figure out what kind of pilots you guys are. Gauge what kind of scum I'm dealing with. So, what is your favorite ship? What load up would you put on it? Upgrades, illicit or otherwise, and why? Rebel, you first.
Well, my favorite ship, I'd have to say, is Korn for sure, because I've flown a lot.
Korn is not a ship. He's a pilot, but if you could emulate his skills, what would it be?
I love the fact that you can shoot him down to no shields, and then he just gets them back with R2-D2 for sure. That's my biggest thing.
So you're a big fan of the E-Wing then?
Yeah, E-Wing, Korn. Not really the E-Wing, just more Korn. Nobody else on the E-Wings are super great.
So no other pilot really masters the kind of level of skill that Korn brings to the table?
No. The double shots. Beauty.
So what you're saying is you want to be like Korn, and it doesn't really matter which type of ship you are. You just want to be able to use the Force like he can.
Yeah, actually, using that pilot skill, you could use it on a lot of ships, probably. Really. And
of course, an R2 astromech that is purely dedicated on regenerating shields, something that we've seen before, like R2-D2 would go on there. What kind of other skills would you want to master being on the E-Wing?
The barrel roll for sure. That'd be something cool if you were actually in an E-Wing to do, is a barrel roll. I like veteran instincts on them. A lot of people like push the limit, but I find it really takes away from his dial, personally. You know, like you have to do those green maneuvers, which means you're slow. E-Wing doesn't have a super lot of greens, so I like VI.
Sounds good. And Chris, what kind of pilot are you? What do you like? What do you like flying? If you had the opportunity of any ship, if you have the ability to purchase any ship, what kind of ship would you like to purchase? What upgrades? What pilot abilities?
Well, before we really go any further here, I just want to say my time as a droid, I have hooked up with a lot of astromechs, and they are good to go. Outside of that, I would probably describe myself most like a B-Wing. I'm kind of slow, but I hang in the fight for a while, and I spin around real fast. So that's probably where I'd be going with that. Love those things with a little FCS, like keeping them pretty basic. But if it wasn't just about me, if it's not what I'm about, if it's more what I like to fly, I love TIE fighters. I love flying the Swarm. I love keeping it basic or going up doing something like the Crack Swarm. You know, from time to time, add in something like Omega Leader. Juke's always fun because messing with other people's dice is a great time. But for the most part, I like to keep it pretty basic.
So you really take your bounty hunter scum name to heart.
Oh yeah,
And in the essence of you like being an absolute nuisance to whoever you're going up against.
absolutely. My motto and really my playstyle is give my opponents more problems than they have answers for.
And he's pretty good at it too.
All right. Well, we've talked about how good you are at, or what you would like to be behind when it comes to flying. What do you think is the least lacking ship when it comes to the different forces and their ability to muster an incredible force to the front?
Whoa!
And
If we're gonna do this, where's my points? We were told we were gonna get points.
Where's my rations?
you obviously got the point on that one. I just didn't want to rub it into the meat bag over here. So yes, of course you get the point for that one. And
So if we're switching quickly if we're going then into who needs love, I'm gonna go with the Scum faction. Straight up, before anyone does it, I'll jump in and I'll say there are two ships that need more love than anything else out there, and it's not the Schick or Sick or whatever you want to call it. Straight up, the Star Viper. Star Viper is real expensive. There's only one title, and you want that title on everyone, but it's expensive. It needs some love. It's not seen enough play. And the Kraz, both those ships, I mean, as much as people love Talonbane, Cobra, and some of the pilots for it, it just doesn't get the job done. And putting some stuff in there that would make it maybe a little more Scum, if you would, a little less rest of the game, could really bring it back into the fray. I think maybe if we saw something that introduced double illicits on these ships or something weird, I think we could see the ships get pulled back into the meta again.
all right, so out of the two, then, which do you think needs the most help as a fighter?
Out of the two, I would have to say it's the Star Viper, for sure. I mean, we saw recently at the Invitational there in London, fans voted that it was the ship for Scum that people had to play. And, there's Guri. That's it. Kind of like Andrew was talking earlier about Corrin and the E-Wing. You have Guri, but Guri's not even that good, So it's a hurting ship that needs some love. Cool looking model, just doesn't see enough time on the table.
And how would you fix it? What would you do in order to bring the Star Viper in line with the other fighters that have been seeing a lot of use?
I think the simplest things that you could do, again, bringing in titles, not unlike we've seen with some of the other ships, or even something like the Chardon refit. I think it would be really cool if we basically saw them get free auto thrusters, something to that that would really start putting them back on the table. I mean, the problem really is that, not unlike the A-Wing, it's too expensive for what it can get done on the table, and you just can't put enough bang into it. So it needs maybe even something like the TIE Advanced Pro got with a free modification up to X number of points. So that could be cool.
I totally agree, actually.
You're definitely dealing with a machine mind. Are you going to add something different to that subject, or are you just going to back the droid and saying that the Star Viper is the fighter that needs the work?
Oh, first, I would like to back the droid. Just saying that the Star Viper definitely does need a buff. I agree. I've ever since I started seeing it, and it never really was too great. You never saw anyone play it effectively in a competitive setting. And I always thought that a good way to buff it, like maybe even a good title to add, would be to add the evade action or an evade token.
So something similar to what the TIE Defender got.
Yeah. I think that would. I mean, it's got a pretty good dial, you know. But that was always the problem for me, was that it had no way to take an evade token, and with the 4 hull and 1 shield, I always hated that like chassis, you know, even with the Kirzaks. The 4 hull and 1 shield, just the shield gets eaten up, and then you're just taking crits to the face, really.
Yeah.
So, and as far as the Kirzak's concerned, I mean, I think part of it is the dial. It's just a T65 dial, you know, with one difference, which is the hard ones instead of having hard threes.
It does have the signal loop, though.
Yeah, that's a good call.
It was the introduction of the signal loop. We saw it come in. We saw it bring that to the game, and everyone thought, "Oh, this is going to be game changing because you're going to be off angle and things like that." And I mean, signal loops are great. We see it on tie-up-Os. You got it on aggressors. It's a good move, but it's not that good. I think, especially because a ship like this with auto thrusters really wants to sit and flirt at a further range or out of arc. I mean, kind of adding.
We're talking about the Star Viper here.
Still talking Star Viper.
Yeah.
I think something that could maybe, pulling from other ships in the Scum faction, and I got to go to my droid peeps on this one. If we were looking at something not unlike IG-88 Delta, and gave it some like a 3 hard sloop, so that you could pull that maneuver, still be staying out at range 3, but just getting a totally different angle on people, and kind of flirt out there for a while. Anything that keeps them out there, keeps auto thrusters in the games, keeps them pumping 3 dice downrange, could bring them back. But we really have to see what FFG wants to do with their playstyle.
Yeah. So I'm going to go for something that is kind of completely left field from my perspective as both an Imperial officer as well as an Imperial player, and say that the fighter that I would like to see have the most improvements, and it's going to be very tricky, would probably be the T-65 X-Wing. Now, over the years, ever since its production, way back when, the T-65 has had a lot of love thrown its way. However, none of it has been able to stick. You have many, many pilots, such as Wedge Antilles and Biggs Darklighter, that are mainstays. However, I feel that they are outliers in the faction, as well as for what the T-65 brings to the table, and for the most part is completely overshadowed by the Resistance 30 years in the future, obviously, the T-70 X-Wing. Now, with the integrated astromech, that kind of brings it somewhat in line. However, I don't believe it really does what the T-65 should always have been, which is the mainstay of the Rebel force. And I think that titles and upgrades such as that might be able to really allow it some versatility. We haven't seen a Rogue Squadron title. We haven't seen any specific titles concerning setups for specific missions, that kind of thing. Like you could have, while the Y-Wing already has, the BTL title that you got was the title that you saw the Y-Wings at the Battle of Yavin. Okay? So you haven't seen something like that for the X-Wing, and the X-Wing is supposed to be the most versatile, most iconic aspect of the Rebel Force, so much so that B-Wing pilots were getting forced to use X-Wings in order to stay in line with their squadron in the EU.
So many retrofits and upgrades.
Yeah, exactly.
In the lore.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I don't know. I think that the most recent expansion pack with the Force Awakens starter kit, I feel that really pushed the boundaries of what's in and what's out, and I feel that the T-70, and for the most part, almost point inflated everything. So now you have a lot of the really old fighters, and you see that with the A-Wing with the Chardon refit, and you see that with the TIE Advanced X1 title, that kind of thing, and you see that with the TIE Defender, where you're getting more for your buck. And the X-Wing still, even with the integrated astromech, it's still far behind. Doesn't have access to some of these modifications.
Talk about that power creep, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. You are seeing it. The basic X-Wing, while it has a lot of customizability, and really you can, with almost like artistic precision, take one and really try to meld it into a squadron. However, the amount of effort in order to master that and to blend it in with your squadron is just so much better to take something that is already good. You're not having to spend that kind of effort, that kind of energy in order to make it good and really flesh it out.
Yeah. Like even if it got, like not even talking about like the lore that you're talking about, even if it got like a upgrade where it could be remodeled to a T-70. You know, you take a T-65 and, I mean, that's a little generic, a little boring in a sense.
I don't think it needs that kind of level. I think the T-70 and the T-65 should be different fighters. After all, you know, the fighters that, the pilots that showed up in the T-65 might never have had the opportunity to show up in the T-70. However, I feel that because both the EU and the current canon universe are in play at the simultaneous, so a kind of temporal flux is, if you will, I think is really important to develop a rogue title, like a rogue squadron title, that kind of thing, in order to leverage those abilities. You'll probably see, you won't even see the vectored engines that is coming out in the ARC 170 being put onto the X-Wing, because it still will need that integrated astromech.
Yeah, it's like you're taking that mod slot, which is really important.
Exactly. What are your thoughts on my pick?
Well, straight up with that one, I got to center this around, again, my peeps. I think the T-65, the heart and the core of what will fix the T-65, and this one might again sound like it's out in left field, it is the droids. And I'm not saying new droids necessarily, but if we look at the game when it came out, T-65, first part of the launch with the TIE Fighter and a bunch of astromechs. Most of these astromechs were reliant on actions, right? And the problem was, you wanted target locks, you wanted focus. So the chance to actually use those was out there. But here's the thing. The astromech is doing the work. So first off, I think they could just, as opposed to making it a dial change or whatever, I think they make a straight up FAC rules change with it. Not unlike what they did with the Phantom. I really think that the T-65 needs to start their fix with droids and how droids actually work on a T-65. I think we should get a T-65 specific change that's going to allow them to have droids do their actions as free actions. So what does this mean? Yeah, you're no longer having to stop and say, well, do I want to focus, for some defense or offense, or do my droid's ability? Nope, I'm going to straight up be able to do both, right? Because my droid is working for me, just like R2 is pinning down that stabilizer, right? So I think that's the first thing that brings the T-65 back in, especially because in the new movies, while, yeah, they had droids, we saw BB-8, we didn't see them doing as much as we saw something like R2 doing in the original one. So I'd really like to bring those old school ones back and put in what the droids were really doing for them. Second to that, I would love to see, like you're saying, a squadron title come out. And I think one of the big parts of that is really where this ship is sitting in its weight class. Maybe instead of trying to do all the other changes that, bringing in a system or whatever it is, maybe that's just that every single one of these is loaded to bear with a proton torp. It starts to bring back ordnance into the game. It makes you make a decision then between, do I want to take integrated astromech, be a bit tankier, or do I want to take guidance chips, be a bit more reliable on it? It starts making you make choices. And where, anything that puts choices back into the game is a really good idea.
I like it.
Well, it looks like you get the point once again, Chris, as not only did Andrew completely agree with you on your pick, but you summed up my edition quite nicely.
Yeah, I'm just the agreeer apparently.
All right, so all of you are.
I get the sympathy cookie at the end.
I bet it's tasty.
Well, he has to give you that sympathy cookie. He wins the cookies, so it's up to him to share that cookie with you.
Just remember who's helping you here, Mr. Droid. This meatbag.
All right, so you were both distinguished pilots. The Empire has detailed records of both of you commanding squadrons of fighters to victory. However, with the region wars, aka regionals, coming, I'm curious, what do you think will be the most powerful contenders? What squadrons will reign supreme? Let's start with you, Andrew.
Okay. Well, I'm probably gonna give up some stuff our little droid's not gonna like, but Dangaroo for sure.
So you're referring to the notorious bounty hunter couple, Dengar
Yes.
and his wife.
Yeah, which is kind of actually pretty cool. That list has a good backstory. It's just really good, and it's not the hardest list to fly. Like, it's not like trying to pick up PAL bases and make that work in like a week. I'll let Chris get into this maybe specifics of the list, but let's just say that's what I'd be flying if I was coming.
All right, so I guess that goes right to you, Chris. What do you? Well, first of all, I guess you're to explain Andrew's point a little bit more by saying that Dengar and his wife Manaru are going to be a force to be reckoned with, more than the IG-88 tag team. Why do you think that is? And what do you think what would your pick be for contender at the regionals event upcoming?
So, as people are calling this list offensively Dengaroo, I believe it's rightfully called Star-Crossed Lovers. Two crazy kids alone out there in a world just trying to take down some bounty, looking for booty. Why is it good? Well, it's almost an example of the first one-ship list. Yeah, there's two on the table, but one's doing all the work. It takes one ship, overloads it with stress, but makes it just max out every single possible role it can get in the game, while another one rolls around as a great support ship. Really interesting list. It's easy to pick up, hard to master, but Dengar just does work. And the real trick to the whole thing is Zuckuss. And yep, I'm just rolling with more bounty hunter names here because, again, when it's not droids, it's bounty hunters I care to talk about. Zuckuss making people reroll on their defensive rolls for stress. Dengar doesn't care because Manaru's passing him some focus every turn. The list is great. It's also cool because we're seeing it come in a ton of different varieties. Not unlike Pal Bases has different flavors. This one has people putting different droids on it, different build-outs on Manaru. But for the most part, Dengar usually stays the same with Punishing One title, Lone Wolf, Zuckuss for starters. Countermeasures. Most people are rocking them with Glitter Stem, and then it's a choice of torps from there. And then Manaru's kind of freewheeling. And while I think it's a good list and it'll be up there, I think the real list to watch out for is still Pal Bases. I mean, a person who plays Pal Bases well, because it is a very high skilled list, is the person to beat. The fact that the Emperor's out there just changing a single roll and trying to push damage in past anything that has 3+ defense dice with auto thrusters, multiple tokens, and the Emperor, it's not a good day for you. So
yeah, it's you're gonna see a lot of Dangaroo, and you're gonna see not as much Pal Bases, but probably the guys who are playing Pal Bases are gonna be really good at it.
So the Star-Crossed Lovers, as Chris has come to calling it, do you think that has supplanted the dreaded U-boats or the Wolf Pack or the triple jump master list in terms of fear factor, or is this still an outlier that is starting to make waves? A lot from what everybody was afraid of for such a while. As soon as the Jumpmaster came out, was this, the torp boats, low pilot skill, no
With
real,
an EPT
not real
somehow.
thought. But of course, and I'll get into this a second. The FAQ fixed that a little bit, but again, we'll get that back to that in a second. But for the most part, what are your thoughts on, the status of this compared to the U-boats? Andrew first.
Well, man or star-crossed lovers, as Chris would like me to call them,
Thank you.
is
You're working hard for that cookie.
It's kind of the new Jump Masters in a sense. It's the list that everybody's looking at. Everybody wants to figure out how to beat it. It has an answer for everything. You have your countermeasures, which take a target lock off, therefore like making Omega Leader pretty much ineffective against you. You have Glitter Stim. You can pop that if you're facing a swarm. The list goes on and on. But yeah, I think it is the new Jump Masters in a sense. Everyone's looking at it. Everybody's trying to figure out how to beat it. The answer to Jump Masters ended up being Palp Aces or some form of Imperial A-holes, as they call it, like Palp Shuttle with Wampa and Scourge and whatever. So what I think with the new FAQ, it has, everyone likes to call it nerfed the Jump Masters, but not really, obviously. It changed their attack rolls down from a 90 to like a 75%. But I think with the Jump Masters kind of being overshadowed by all these Palp Aces and now the Star-Crossed Lovers, it kind of has opened up the stress bot meta that Rebels had. It's kind of brought them back into the fold. That might be the surprise of the regionals. If someone brings that, they might do better than they would think they would do.
Okay, and Chris, what are your thoughts on my question concerning the Starcraft lovers compared to the original Jump Masters, the OG Jump Masters?
OG. I think it's a way better list for a lot of reasons. The thing is, the original Jump Masters was scare tactics for kind of low mid tier players. It's a one trick pony that as soon as people started figuring out, oh hey, I could either block this, dummy a ship, pull focus. There's a lot of ways you can take that out. It's really scary at first if you just decide to joust it every time. And so it was really more a scare factor to low skill bases, whereas Dengaroo can really mix it up and do a bunch of things. So part of that also is just in how we see people fly Jump Masters. Most people are going to fly them not unlike formation flying other ships, not bringing them in on different angles or at different speeds to really give themselves a lot of options. So the Jump Masters, OG Jump Masters, that way, easier list to beat. I think we're going to see this one come up a lot more because it does have a lot more answers to a lot of things. It's more forgiving at a base level, but as soon as you lose one of these ships, the game goes south rapidly. So it does it's high risk, high reward.
From my perspective, I'm going to go on the record and say that I went on the record back when the Jump Masters first came out, and people asked me my opinions on what this means for the meta. Is this the end of days kind of thing when it came to what kind of squadrons we're going to be seeing, if the Empire was going to have some kind of way of dealing with that, and well, what are the Rebels saying, kind of thing. And I went on the record right then and there and said, I'm happy that it's out now. I'm happy that it was something that was developed basically as the jump masters were coming out of hyperspace, as it were. They weren't even out, and this list was already on our projections on ComSat. So with that in mind, all it took was time. It was like a virus.
Yes.
It needed to get into the bloodstream and work its magic, and then your natural immune system, your ability to fight against it, figure out ways of beating it, would come to the fold. And I think that the Star-Crossed Lovers is very similar. A lot of people will tote, when it comes to list building, a lot of people will tote, oh, well, this is the greatest thing ever. This is going to win every time. And that's not the case as long as you are willing to put in the time and effort to figure out, play against it, know what you're dealing with, and come up with something that I find is fair and balanced. You look at the things that Paul Heaver, a notorious battlefield commander, has taken to many of these large events, and they tend to be relatively skill-based fighters, and not anything particularly flashing, but exploited the weaknesses that were around in the meta at the time. So I think that that's, when it comes to Pop Aces, when you compare that to Star-Crossed Lovers, both of them are obviously very good because people are spending time and effort, and of course the fighters themselves are good, and there's a good combination there. And I'm happy that has both of those have supplanted the one-trick pony, as it were. As for me, I don't know how good they're going to be, but I think that the Ghost is still going to be a very big contender, and that not for a lot of reasons that people expect. Rebels are in a very tricky spot right now because they just don't have a lot of flash to bring to the table. And I think that really is the fault of what I was talking earlier in the recording, which was there has been an inflation points. So for the most part, when it comes to Rebels, they got this nice big shiny the Ghost, and it can do a tremendous amount of things that until Heroes of the Rebellion come out, or Heroes of the Resistance come out, which will definitely open the door to seeing more T-70s and seeing the Falcon re-enter play for sure.
And maybe this will even be, we'll see a fix for the T-65.
I don't think so, because we've already seen the cards, but we can talk about that later. However, when it comes to the Ghost, it is one of those things that is tremendously scary for a couple of reasons. The ability to just annihilate an ace that gets too close, that's with the title ability and the
Phantom.
Well, the Phantom title, as long as it's docked, and then the auto turret. So being able to just go, and then an accuracy corrector, something like that. So I say, okay, you take 4 damage. Well, that kills Sunter.
Yeah.
That kills. That will kill an Inquisitor.
Yep.
So, and once the Inquisitor or Sunter, Vader will take 1+ turns to kill, but he can't survive 2 rounds of that. Nobody can. Yeah. And with Biggs, and then that's a classic build. There's other builds obviously, but with something like Biggs can absorb a lot of those shots until he's dead, and then the Ghost can really pick up the slack. So I think the Ghost has a lot of potential. I don't know if we'll see it at the Atlantic regionals be top tables worthy, but I think that has a lot of potential. I personally would fly the Defender list that has been seen on Wookiees on X-Wing. I love that. Chris enjoyed playing against it, I think, because we played a couple of games, and it was a lot of fun. So if I was at an ability, at a level of skill that I could bring that to regionals, I wish I could. I'm not going to, because I'm going to be organizing the whole thing. So I don't literally have no time on my hands for that kind of nonsense. But I think the TIE Defender is just starting to make waves, and I would love to see the aftermath of that. All right, point goes to Chris once again. Thank you, Chris, for elaborating on everything Andrew had to say.
If you guys want to see where I'm going to put all these ROM chips later, I'll give you guys a private showing.
Nice. The next question I have for both of you, I want to start with Chris only because he's rocking rocking the boat a little bit, and I want him to say something so that Andrew here can really think about his time in the corner, and that is that with all the conversation we were talking about regionals. Regionals are absolutely massive battles. They can take several hours. ComSat has predicted that the upcoming engagement is going to go for over 12 hours. 75-minute rounds, 6 rounds Swiss, and then a top 8 cut. How do you prepare for such an ordeal? What do you bring? What do you pack? What do you eat? Chris, you don't need to eat anything, but I'm sure you're going to have a battery pack or, an extension cord plugged into the wall in order for you to charge up.
Special battery pack.
Special batteries, yeah. For things like this, one of the things I think people don't talk about or take into consideration enough is actually sleep. How many people do you know stay up way too late beforehand trying to, rack their brains on the forum, change their list at the last moment, do whatever it is they want to do. But they don't get enough sleep before the tournaments. And that's hard. And, some ships, some builds a lot more mentally taxing through tournaments than others. Last year at regionals, I flew a tie swarm, and it's some mental gymnastics for that long of a day. But sleep, number one. Definitely like to start off, good breakfast before I get there. I always bring lots of water, and I try and have some sort of snack on me, just to not so that I'm thinking about food and I'm just fueling myself through it. I'm a person that loves nuts. Insert jokes here. I love nuts.
George, I'm supposed to love nuts.
Oh my! Wrong universe.
So, do enjoy some cashews. Love having those. Just a quick little snack between things. I try and avoid a lot of the pop and things like that, though. To be honest, usually late in a tournament, round 5, round 6, I might at that point have a small energy drink or something to bolster me up, get my head back into things and go. But realistically, water and some small snacks really is just gonna up your performance, because you're not tired, thirsty, and worrying about that stuff.
All right, Andrew, what do you have to say for yourself?
Okay. This one, I'm telling you right now, Chris, I'm winning it. So I'm getting my one cookie on this one. Definitely sleep. That's 100% a good one. It's hard sometimes because you get nervous. Regionals is a lot of people's worlds, or nationals, because most people don't get to go to nationals, don't get to go to worlds. So you get nervous, but try to get as much sleep as you can. What I would say is...
That's a really good point. I like that you brought that one up. You're blowing me out of the water here.
I'm giving you a +1, man.
Never before heard on Prisoner Transfer W00K13.
I feel like I'm Manaru.
Just raising them up.
But honestly, the day before or the night before, what I would do is I would want to get a lot of carbs. Carbs be like a pasta, brown rice, something of that nature, like a brown rice and a chicken, fish or omega-3s, because that's brain food and that's what you want. You want to take that probably during the day or maybe the night before, but you want to get those omega-3s because that's what feeds your brain. Then during, fruit, a lot of fruit, and like Paul Heaver does, pistachios. That's more omega-3s, good carbs. You want something that's going to give you longevity, and fruit gives you energy, like good, fast energy. So like that would last an hour or 75 minutes in that case per game. So I pack a lot of snack because I just eat every single after every single round, nibble. That's what I would say. You see a lot of people that get to, that's one of my biggest strengths is later in the rounds, like say if you're in the 6th or 7th or 8th game, I'm more aware than say some of my opponents, like in tournaments before I've played against people and you look across the table and they're sweating and they've got a headache and these are things you want to try to avoid. I mean, the sweating can't help, but drink lots of water. I take like a 4-liter water thing, and that's what you want to do.
At a certain point, though, you don't want to drink too much water if you're not used to drinking that much water because you might have to run to the bathroom all the time. No.
Drink, man. Seriously.
Okay.
No, like drink. Don't worry about
hydration.
It. Go take a leak in the middle if you need to. Like seriously, a lot of people. That is why they get headaches. Honestly, it's dehydration. Almost 100%. Almost, they say like 70% of people don't drink enough water during the day. And in an event like this, while you're mentally exercising yourself to that point, you definitely want to drink a lot of water. Because it's, in a sense, it is almost like going to the gym, but for like, like walking on a treadmill for 12 hours.
Do you even X-Wing, bro?
Yeah, I do even X-Wing, bro.
So for the most part, Chris's point was a lot of helpful points. Get a lot of sleep the night before, get a lot of food as you're playing the game. But your most important game plan for preparing for an event, or one of them anyway, is pay attention to the diet even the day before.
Yes. Physical preparation is a huge factor because your mind and your body are one thing. People want to separate them, but that's not the truth in the end. And I want to add one more point. I've heard a quote that I thought was really good. Why run when you can walk? Why walk when you can stand? And why stand when you can sit? Well, in this case, anytime you don't have to be standing, which is pretty much the entire game you want to be standing, sit down. Okay. Always sit in between games, in between rounds.
All right, well, you're getting that one cookie. I think you really tried hard for it, and
that's like,
I think that we should not, skunk you completely. We'll put you on the board, and we'll give you 1 point for that. So my personal thoughts on the subject, I have seen firsthand going to events, playing up against you, and you completely demolished me for no other reason that you were in a perfect state of health and mental serenity. And I was just completely destroyed 8 hours into an event. I had no ability to think anymore. As you were mentioning, I was sweating bullets because I was at the time drinking things I probably, juice or whatever, high sugar drinks that would cause me to crash, and working a lot harder than I needed to. And you definitely, I'm sure there was other factors for why you win. I'm not being bitter, a year later, but I'm pretty sure that had to do with it.
It definitely was like back in the time when it was like 10 rounds in the tournament,
Oh yeah, for sure.
And you aren't the only one, trust me.
No, it's a good thing to have over your opponent and to have that mental fortitude. The one thing that I would like to add to both of your statements, but all of it really good, healthy advice, is don't do anything too outside of your normal regime. And so, regimen of things you do. So, if you only sleep 8 hours a day, don't go and sleep 12 hours in order to get up for it. Or if you only, don't do things that would actually cause your body strain because it's outside of your habit. Maybe eating a couple meals. Most people's diets are fairly varied. That's not going to turn it upside down too much. Most people are waking up early as it is to drive or something like that, and that can take a toll, and that's unfortunate. But don't do too much outside of the ordinary in order to prepare for this. And don't do too much out of your ordinary not to prepare for this.
Yeah.
Moderation, even in moderation. All right, Andrew gets a point. Yay, Andrew.
Woohoo! I get one cookie. Sweet.
Now on to something gaming related. From the HoloNet, the Gaming Coalition FFG has imposed new regulations for scoring in tournaments. What are your thoughts on the new changes? Andrew, we're starting with you because you got the point last.
I think it's awesome. I know that the MOV doesn't change necessarily, so that was always my biggest weakness. For some reason, I'm really good at getting modified wins. I'll go like 5-1 in a tournament or 6-1, and I'll end up 8th.
So what you're saying is during a game, you're really good at being mediocre.
I'm really good at being slightly above mediocre.
Okay. So
because I get the modifier.
You're the guy in the woods who just runs slightly faster than his friends when the bear's coming after you.
Exactly.
Like, the brisk walk. You're like,
but not as good as like the marathon runners who are way ahead. Just like slightly ahead of the slow people.
So I think it's important to know for those of you who are managed to get your hands on this recording that FFG has had some trouble in the past, some drama, if you will, concerning the scoring. There has been instances of draws taking place, modified wins, things that really complicated the system, and I think a lot of that had to do with their scoring system being taken something similar to, say, Sabak or some of the other holo games and card games related to something that you'd find in those circles. So they've taken that scheme and said, okay, this doesn't work for going for looking at squadrons, that kind of thing. So we're gonna take a different approach on it, and I think it makes my life easier because I can count ones easier than I can count fives for the most part. So yeah, I like it. The one thing that is kind of interesting is the drawing element of it. So like I said, for people who don't know, a win, if you get more points than your opponent, that's a win. Period. You get one more point than your opponent, that's a win. A win is 1 point. A lose is 0 points. If you draw or if you tie at the end of the game, and this is fairly unlikely, tying during a game, I've only ever seen it actually happen once or twice. One time it happened because no ships were destroyed, and the other time it happened was it just happened to be that the number of ships that were destroyed were equal in points. So that in the long time I played X-Wing, it's only happened twice, and yeah, so now it will be you throw a bunch of dice, depending on attack values, that kind of thing, and whoever has more effective damage, they win the tie. So it's kind of like a sudden death rather than a last round. Chris, what are your thoughts on the new regulations and tournament information?
Anything that makes it easier is a good thing. I mean, nobody's liked modified wins. It's, it was always something that just aggravated people. You had people who had more wins than other people who were still lower down the chain. It just ended up being a lot of math and stuff. We just want something simple that keeps it going. Wins push you forward. Within those win brackets, then you chase people down on MOV and other things. So anything that makes it simple is good. The whole final volley thing, okay, sure, kind of a cutesy little, and we turn in and we all shoot for the final draw. But anything that keeps it easier for TOs, so there's less mistakes, errors, or even just time in between rounds, I think is a good thing.
Well,
I agree. I think it's not going to change as much as maybe people think because MOV is still a factor, and in the end, there's going to be a lot more people that'll go 5-1 or whatever, and then it just depends on MOV. So you want to win decisively no matter what anyway. And also with the if you draw and the rolling of the dice thing, it's a little wonky in my opinion, because if you just have a more offensive list, then you have a higher chance because you just roll more dice. But the chances of that stuff coming up, because the chance of you ever even getting a draw is like not that high. So whatever, it doesn't even matter, Like I'm 99% happy with the changes for sure.
Yeah, and the tournament regulations are not the only thing that have come to changes. There's been new FAQs, and it's really important for anybody going to these kinds of events to read up on the FAQs. Don't just ask a friend what changed. Go take the time, go on the website, read them up, so that it's not a surprise. If it changes your makeup, then obviously you're going to want to know ahead of time. Now, for me, whenever I'm running a gaming event, I will have FAQs pretty much easily accessible, and that you both of you are aware of that, and that's not going to change for any kind of regionals events I'm going to be running, such as the one that is going to be at Metagames on July 30th. So the Atlantic Canada, Saturday at this point. Atlantic Canada's regionals. If you haven't booked your ticket or pre-registered for that event, you are kind of out of luck at this point. So maybe next time, but I'm definitely looking forward to that. It's going to be incredible. The other thing, and this goes back to a point that was mentioned earlier, of what do you bring to a specific event? And that is, don't bring everything. Don't bring your whole entire collection. Don't bring 7 different assortments of mats. Don't bring, a 3-course buffet meal. Bring what you're going to play, everything you need, the bare minimum of what you need, and maybe a second list if you change your mind while you're driving, that kind of thing. That's fine. Make sure you have your list printed out. What asteroids, what debris fields you're going to use. Have that printed out so that it's just an easy copy paste. You know exactly, you're not forgetting any cards. The ships that you need, a couple of extra pegs, your damage deck, and your mat. And of course, any kind of snacks, food, that kind of stuff. And your wallet, that's pretty good too. But for the most part, don't bring everything. I think that's really important, not to bring everything.
Yeah.
So, as for your points, I think I'm going to give Andrew the point on that, just because it made me chuckle a little bit concerning your, throwing your damage dice thing. So, the moderator seems to be fickle.
Fickle like a meat bag. All right, let's do this.
I'd like a little bit more information on your take at regionals, specifically when it comes to squad leaders. How do you interact with them? And what can you expect going into one of these regional type events? Andrew, you had the point. You can lead us off.
Look at that, 2 in a row.
Don't let it go to your
head.
head.
To keep calm. If somebody forgets something, generally in the earlier rounds, I'll be more forgiving. But as you get into the finals, you should probably know your list, and I wouldn't expect them to let me change any of my mistakes. So, but generally, I like to fly pretty casual. I don't get too upset about anything. So, if someone decides to be a real pain in the butt, then I'll ignore them. That's pretty much that easy.
As for you, Chris, what kind of advice would you give to somebody going to regionals and interacting with other players?
The first part I always say is remember why you're there, and that should first and foremost be to have fun. Some people are like, well, I'm there to win. I hate to break it to you, we're a bunch of grown men for the most part, with some exceptions to that. But we're playing with toys, right? And when you're playing, you're there to have fun. If you're there to have fun, be a good person. Just have that fun, have that great interaction. Not everyone is gonna do that, and when you realize that, you can put up with it. Not unlike Andrew was saying, some people ignore, some people try and talk them out of things and that. but don't change what you're doing or how you're doing things, because maybe your opponent is more of a negative play experience. I mean, this is a regionals. It's not, the friendly game night at a store. The guy can't just keep making every single mistake on earth or taking it back 2 turns later, right? It is now a higher level formal tournament. So, like you said, usually in the first couple rounds, you'll let some things go, but then, game time starts to happen. And if people start to have issues with that, just remind them what they're doing.
Yeah, that's very good points. And like you say, like if someone jumps out at you and you jumping back just only makes you look like a-hole, it's not gonna, if someone's being an a-hole to you and you're nice the whole time, it only makes you look good.
And like I had a really negative play experience during the store championships. I had one game where my opponent basically threw a tantrum. And what do you do when you're standing there looking at a grown man or semblance of who's having a tantrum? Well, mostly I just kind of had some fun with it. Smiled, realized that worst case scenario, I was going to go home to my loved ones with my little toy spaceships and still have more fun than he was.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point too, is like you're playing with little toy spaceships as a 30-year-old man.
Not everybody that is going to be listening to this recording is going to be, as old as you are, or as cynical as this droid over here. However, there are some things to add to that, and I think that it's very important to go into with the perspective that you're going to have a good time, because that definitely, your perception kind of is your reality for a lot of respects. So if you go in thinking that you're going to have a good time, you probably will. And when it comes to regionals, a lot of people are excited. A lot of people are there to have a good time, for sure. And that can definitely be a really great experience, because not only that, you're all Star Wars fans. Most of the people that are playing this game, 95% of them, now those are stats that I've gotten from the Empire, and 95%, and stats don't lie, say that they're Star Wars fans. No, you have the 5% that just like it from a gaming point of view, but end of the day, you're still all coming together to really enjoy this kind of gaming event. Now, when the bad things do happen, you call a judge over, and this is one thing that I really want to make clear, especially since I am going to be a TO for a regionals event. It is my job to be a TO. It's my job to make judge calls, whatever those judge calls may be. And you aren't a bad person for calling the judge. And you're not going to stress me out or make my life more difficult by calling me over. Now, if you call me over and it's not warranted, then I might give you a death grip. But, that's something completely different. Don't waste my time. But you aren't wasting my time if you have, a really just an even okay reason to call me over. Now, some of the things that are different from a regionals event playing casual is that you have to respect, when you have to respect the phases. Try to keep in mind the proper order of activation. When you're not used to playing a lot, it's easy to forget that you're not allowed to just pick up your dials and look at them whenever. You can't just measure attack ranges whenever. You can't move your ships whenever. You can't move your opponent's ships around the board just because you feel like it. That kind of thing. But, for the most part, if anything does happen, call a judge over. They're happy to help. They're happy to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, they're a neutral party.
Yeah, that's
not like favoring anyone.
The arm of the Empire has reached out to all peoples in order to ensure safety and wealth.
Here comes the propaganda.
And that's the kind
Recruiting.
that's the kind of thing you can expect from me. Points. I don't know. I think Chris really.
You should take your own.
No. Yeah, I want a cookie too. No, I think Chris gets the point for that one because he really said have fun. I think that was the real message to take away from.
Sure.
Andrew,
get 2 cookies. I'm happy.
You should have said that. You should hold people to have fun. What's wrong with you?
You should have a tiny mind link, Chris.
There we go. I say we give the
Yeah.
point to the fans.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can't-
You
can't
guys,
deny.
you guys are the reason why we do this. This is, you're the reason why I even TO at regionals, that kind of thing. So, yeah, absolutely. You guys get the point. You guys get cookies, gluten-free cookies,
for everybody.
which aren't really cookies. But
Oh,
all right,
yeah,
speaking
right.
of regionals, Chris, you just came back from the Eastern Reaches, i.e., Quebec.
We.
They had a major region war there. What can you tell us about your experiences engaging in that conflict? I hear you have some kind of funny stories, even dealing with the dreaded Frog Squad.
Yeah, well, so I had an opportunity. Family was kind of away. I had a free weekend, and changing the name of the list Dangaroo to Star-Crossed Lovers helped convince my wife that yes, I should go play this list in Quebec.
That's always an important factor, convincing the family.
Absolutely, right? You got to get home team on side. So took off to Quebec. It was a fun little 6.5 hour drive away. Didn't really know too much about where the event was located. When I got there, it was Canada Day. Stores were all closed. Couldn't, find the actual shop it was running out of. They hadn't actually posted online which hotel it was being hosted in. So it was kind of a scramble to get there. But it was being hosted by Don John Inc. out of Quebec, their gaming store. And when I got there, the first thing I noticed was, there was 40 guys all wearing Frog Squadron shirts. Big, pilot names on the back, and the Frog Squadron, of course. For all those people who might be listening who are not up on the Quebecois, we joke that they are the frogs, not unlike French around the world. They took a real fun spin on it, made these great shirts, kind of a thing that brought them all together in a game that they really love. And they were having a lot of fun with it. So it was really cool. Being an Anglophone who, attempts to speak French, there were some language issues, but, they really helped me through it the whole day and were really inviting. So I had a really great time there. It was pretty nice venue. And the only real downside was that there wasn't there wasn't too much in the way of actual refreshments or the ability to get drinks at the place. But other than that, it was really good.
I heard that you also you loved it so much there that you left a gift there as well.
Yeah.
You gave him a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. So the tournament, I went in and I went 5-1, and I was really, really stoked. I was having a great time, had done really well. We're standing there listening for the final announcement for the cut to top 8, and they start going through the listings, and oddly, my name doesn't get called. So I'm a bit confused and went up and started talking with them. So there was some confusion. They didn't use kind of the standard templated game sheets for it. They basically handed out these tiny little sheets of paper, not unlike some other games use. And basically you just wrote down 2 numbers on it beside names. And the points had gotten written down wrong. The sheets didn't actually even have a place to write down I won or I lost or I took a modified. It was just numbers. So the things got written down wrong, and so the turn as far as the tournament was concerned, I went 4-2 and was in 10th place instead of 4th place where I should have been. So went and tried to talk to him about this, and I was a little worked up. I won't lie. I had busted my butt all day. I'd done really well.
Of course.
And
6.5 hour drive.
Yeah, 6.5 hour drive. And, here I am being told we're not going to respect the fact that you are 5-1 because you would have played some lower ranked guys. In the moment, I was really steamed about it. And in doing so, basically, I grabbed all my stuff and basically took off. And when I say grabbed all my stuff, that's entirely incorrect. So I absolutely ran a function incorrectly there. And I actually left my case with all my stuff there in Quebec, like on one of the tables. I grabbed my backpack, I grabbed my game mat, and I took off and I drove home. And it wasn't until I was, sitting on my couch, looking at some pictures of the regionals that I was like, why did somebody take a picture of like all my kit? I was actually supposed to play a game with John that night, and I started frantically like tearing my house apart until I realized the fact that I had left all my stuff in Quebec. So the guys were really great. They hooked me up, sent them some money, and they sent me my stuff. So it all turned out well. And I mean, in hindsight, when I talk about this, I think the tournament organizers made the right call. Like, I wasn't happy with it at the time, but I mean, here was some TOs dealing with a tough situation. They were going to have to make a decision that was going to make somebody unhappy. They knew that was going to happen because somebody wasn't going to be in the top 8. And it happened to be me. So what? They had a dilemma. They had to make somebody unhappy. Well, what they did was, they gave me the extra set of dice. I wanted to play for the championship. I didn't want to take it like that. But it, it was just a great sign of respect and more so of the community. Like, I think this community is the best gaming community out there, and it's stuff like that. Like, they were like, hey, that sucks, and we want to do something. Like, we can't change things, but we want to try and make it right with you. So, went home with some glitter stim, as I'm referring to it, and looks some little white rocks in a baggie, and it was overall it was a really great experience. I mean, my 6.5 hour steaming mad drive home listening to X-Wing podcasts was probably not the best decision ever, but the tournament itself was a lot of fun.
Yeah, they tried to make the best of obviously a pretty bad situation.
It sounds like you had a lot of fun. Like you said, it sounds like you had a lot of fun either way, and I'm glad that you made some friends. If I recall correctly, some of those players that you interacted with at the Quebec regionals, they might actually be showing up to the Atlanta, Canada regionals. So
yeah, there's a couple guys coming out. The number 2 player, he's gonna be a beast. He messaged me and was looking for a couch to sleep on and stuff. There's a bunch of them. I really, at the end of the day, I'm hoping to get back out there and go play some more in Quebec in the future, and maybe one of these days wrangle myself one of those Frog Squadron t-shirts.
There you go.
Nice.
The only Anglophone speaking Frog Squad guy.
X-Wing definitely brings us together, binds us. As for that little delightful story, Chris, you're going to get a bonus point for that.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah, he's just getting all the points. I think I'm a little biased because he's a bounty hunter that has sometimes worked for the Empire, whereas you are just completely scum.
Rebel scum.
Just complete rebel scum. Yeah. You've with 7 different counts of smuggling and 3 different counts of rebel larceny. So,
is it fair to point out one of those times he was smuggling me? So that was awkward.
Yeah, and he never shuts up. So that's should be a point away from, it should be like an extra point for me.
Well, Chris, it looks like your sentence is getting a little bit alleviated as we make our trek to the detention center. And I'm not going to broadcast that in case rebels are listening. That might,
Oh, where was that?
No, it's fine. You don't. That's for me to know and for you
put
to
my blindfold back.
Yeah. Here we go. And that is today's show. If you enjoyed the Neutron Stars maiden voyage, be sure to rate this podcast or like it on YouTube. If you would like to ask me or my prisoners questions, tweet to @Corhath. That's CORHATH with the hashtag PTW. And if you want more X-Wing goodies, be sure to check out northerngamingnetwork.com or like us on Facebook to keep up with our most recent news. Once again, this has been Prisoner Transfer W00K13. See you next time.